Hi friends, my name is Bevin Cohen. I'm the owner of Small House Farm in Michigan and author of the books Saving Our Seeds, The Practice and Philosophy, and The Artisan Herbalist, coming soon from New Society Publishers. Today we're going to talk about making herbal teas, tinctures, and salves at home. We'll talk about the equipment that you're going to need and the basic procedures to craft all of these herbal wellness products in the comfort of your own home. So first we're going to start with herbal tea. Now let's get started with a water infusion. The most popular form of a water infusion, I suppose, is the herbal tea. So let's go ahead and brew ourselves some tea right now. Now, first thing that we'll need is some herbs. So I got a nice herbal blend right here. But when you're just getting started practicing herbalism and learning how to make these types of things, I always recommend starting with a single herb. Starting with one single herb is going to give you the opportunity to really learn about that herb, the flavor profile, the aromas, the effect that the herb may have when you use it. So get yourself a notebook, get yourself an herb, and sit down and really take the time to experience this herb and everything that it has to offer. Now, I got an herbal blend that we're going to use here that we've created, so let's go ahead and brew that up. For an herbal tea, what we have to do first is select what we're going to use to brew. There's a wide variety of choices here. We've got some stainless steel tea balls. We've got these types of baskets that'll nestle on the top of your teacup. We can use reusable tea bags, whatever it may be, whatever you have accessible to you. These are really nice because we can use them over and over again. So we're going to choose our little ball. Now for one single cup of tea, we're going to want about a half to a full tablespoon of herb. And then our favorite teacup. And some hot water. Now with a water infusion, what's happening here is the hot water is the menstruum that we're using to extract the chemical components from the plant material to create our infusion. Now with a cup of tea that we're going to use as a beverage, we're just going to let it steep for about 3 to 5 minutes or so. And you'll notice that it's ready because you'll be able to get the aroma and the flavor from the herbs in your beverage. If you're looking for a stronger, more medicinal brew, you can actually take your herbs and put them in the refrigerator for 12 to 24 hours to really give that water time to extract as much of the water-soluble chemicals from that plant material as possible. This is a technique that's going to work well with flowers, leaves, many of the aerial portions of our plants. But if we're dealing with something that's twigs, bark, thickly coated seeds, these more dense parts of the plant, we're actually going to want to use a process known as decoction. And all this simply means is taking the plant material and boiling it in water. It'll break down those cell walls and release the chemical constituents that we're trying to extract from this plant material. So that's a water infusion. Now, we don't always have to use it as a tea either. Water infusion can be handy as a topical wash or can be used in making a compress. And a compress is simply taking our herbal infusion and then a bandage or a rag or something like that, soaking it with the tea, and then using that topically on the skin. And there's a number of applications for a compress, and we may get into that in a little bit. But that is the basics of a water extraction herbal infusion. Simple stuff. And now I've got some delicious tea to enjoy for the rest of the video. The second thing that we're going to talk about is what's known as a tincture. Now, a tincture is similar to a water infusion, except instead of using hot water as our menstruum, as our extraction material, we're going to use alcohol. And while some chemical constituents in our plant are water soluble, almost every chemical component in a plant is alcohol soluble. So a tincture is a very potent herbal extract. So let's walk through how simple it is to make one. Now, the first thing that we're going to need to make our tincture is a container to do our extracting. In this case, I'm going to use this mason jar, but you can use whatever you have available at home. You can reuse a jar from your kitchen, whatever it may be. The second thing that we're going to need, of course, is our herb. In this case, we're going to use this nice dried nettle leaf that we harvested earlier in the year. I prefer to use dried herbs when I make my tinctures, but if only fresh is what you have available, you're going to want to let it sit around for a few days to kind of wilt a little bit, let some of that moisture out of the plant before you get to work with it. So then, simply what we're going to do here is take our herbs, pack them into the jar. Now there's a couple of ways that we can go about measuring our herb to alcohol ratio. Many times you'll find what's called the folk technique. Is just simply filling the jar up with the plant material that you have, and then adding your alcohol until it is, about a finger or two's depth past the plant material, just ensuring that your plant material is fully submerged. I always recommend keeping notes in your herbal notebook on the techniques that you're using, the recipes that you may be making. This way you can refer back to that later to reproduce these recipes that were successful. So if we're going to do something like this, I think it's important that we measure the herbs and alcohol that we use in our tinctures. That way we can perfectly reproduce it every time that we make it. And as we become more experienced as herbalists and we start to use herbs that are potentially toxic in larger doses, it's very important that we keep accurate records and measurements of the medicine that we're making. So if we're going to do that, we're going to want to measure the weight of the herb in a ratio to the volume of the liquid. Weight to volume. We're going to use the folk method for this demonstration though. And so we're going to add our menstruum, our alcohol that we're going to use to extract, just to fully submerge that plant material. Now in this situation, I'm using vodka, right? And you can use any kind of alcohol extract that's going to work best for you. You'll find in a lot of old recipes, they mention brandy as the alcohol of choice. The reason that I like to use vodka though is because it has very little scent and very little flavor. And that allows the herb itself to really stand up in the recipe, really showcase itself. We're going to use this chopstick here, and we're going to poke our plant material down. We're essentially just kind of moving around, helping release the air, getting the air bubbles out of there that we can. As far as potency goes, you're going to want to use a 40 to 50% alcohol, which would be 80 to 100 proof. It's important that we use a strong enough alcohol so we get a good extraction, and that's also going to ensure shelf stability in our final product. So now at this point, we're going to want to cap our tincture off and put it away in a cool, dark place. The proper extraction time here is going to be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. You can let it go a little bit longer than that. It's obviously shelf stable, so more than 6 weeks is going to be fine, but it's not going to get any more potent at that point. So 4 to 6 weeks is going to give us a nice potent extraction. Now we're going to want to label our tincture when we put it into storage. So we're going to want to put on it obviously the name of the herb, the alcohol that we use for the menstruum, the potency, the proof of the alcohol that we used, as well as the date. You can use today's date if you like, or the date when the tincture is going to be ready. Either way that you choose is fine, but you want to make sure that you're consistent with that labeling, just to avoid any confusion in the future. Also, put the same information in your notebook, and that way you've got it to refer to back to on another date. I'm going to put this away, like I said, in a cool, dark place for about 4 to 6 weeks and let it extract. Once it's ready, we can take it out, we can filter it, and bottle it. Let's go ahead and do that. I've got right here, let's do this one. This is a beautiful lavender flower extraction that we've been working on. And wait till you see this. All right, now we're going to get a jar so we can filter this out, and we're going to need a screen to filter. In this case, I'm going to use this funnel that I've got. You can get one of these at a brew supply place. These are super handy. It's a big old funnel, and it's got a removable screen for filtering right there. And it's easy to wash since that screen comes right out. Oh my gosh, look at that coloration right there. Absolutely beautiful. Now, you can tell I didn't empty the entire jar, and you would want to do that if you were doing this at home. And you'd want to make sure you press that plant material to squeeze any little bit of tincture out of there that you can. You don't want to waste any of it. You can use any sort of a press that you want. You can use something like a potato masher. Everybody's got one of those at home. Or you can even get your hands on a tincture press, a piece of equipment specifically for this. But you can actually use something like a French press, like you'd use for making coffee. Very, very similar and significantly less expensive. Just to squeeze this plant material out of there to make sure you get every last drop of this potent medicinal. Once you have your container like this, you're probably going to want to package it into something a little smaller, a little easier to use. So I would recommend these bottles. The small house, we use these 2-ounce guys. This just seems to be the right size for a good amount of medicine. And it comes with this dropper top. Now the dropper top's important. Remember how I mentioned how most every chemical constituent in the plant is alcohol soluble. And this is a very potent medicinal extract. Whereas with our tea, we'll drink it by the cup. With our tincture, the dose is actually measured by the drop. Anywhere from 2 drops to a teaspoon, very small doses, right? So this type of package is perfect for that sort of thing. And again, you're going to want to label this. Label this, label your jars. Proper labeling is key to successful herbalism, even if it's just simply herbalism at home. Now let's move on to our third herbal extraction. In this situation, what we're actually going to use is fat. We're going to extract the fat-soluble chemicals from our plant material. And what we're going to use actually is oil. So the process is similar to how we make our alcohol extraction, tincture, and water infusion teas, right? So we're going to start with our plant material. I think today we're going to make some calendula oil. Look at this beautiful stuff, huh? Beautiful golden color. So, same technique. I'm going to load our jar up with herbs. And then add our oil. Now, just as we did with our tincture, we're going to fill our jar up to a certain level, depending on how much herb we have available to us. And then we're going to top it off with our oil. Again, about a finger or two just past the top of the plant material. Again, ensuring that we have that plant material completely submerged under the oil. We're going to use the folk technique once again. But if you wanted to take accurate measurements, again, it would be volume of oil in a ratio to the weight of the herb. And that way we can reproduce the same oil time and time again, exactly the same way. In this case, we used an olive oil. It's readily accessible to most folks. You can get it at the grocery store. But most any kind of plant oil is going to work. There's a few options, and I'll give you a little bit of guidance based on my experience. Since we're making products that are going to go onto our skin, and this is going to go on the skin of myself, my family, my friends, it's important to me to use quality ingredients all the way through. At Small House, all of the herbs that we use are wildcrafted from our area or grown right in our garden. So we've already developed that relationship. But the oil that we choose to use is just as important. If you're purchasing oil at the grocery store, you want to ensure that you use an expeller pressed oil. It'll say expeller pressed specifically on the label, and what this means is that the oil is being extracted through the use of pressure, essentially squeezing the seeds or nuts and pulling the oil out of them. Now this is opposed to chemically extracted oils, which a number of our more refined, less expensive oils at the grocery store may be, and these actually are extracted with a chemical called hexane, which is just a couple molecules away from being gasoline, and not necessarily something I would want to put on my body or the body of those that I love. It's also important to note that the oils that we use are derived from plants. And just as we choose the herbs that we use based on their particular properties, the plants that these oils come from also have properties that they can offer to our medicinal products as well. So, choosing wisely what oils we use will enhance the quality of our products and ensure greater satisfaction for us and everyone that we share them with. We're going to put the cap on this jar and we're going to label it. Again, we're going to want to put the herb that's in here, the menstruum that we're using, the type of oil, and the date. Now again, we can either use today's date or the date 4 to 6 weeks from now. Our oils are going to want to extract for 4 to 6 weeks, very similar to our tinctures. And again, whatever style of labeling that you use, whether it's today's date or the finished date, be consistent with your labeling. And now we're going to pack this guy away on the shelf and let it sit to extract. Let's fast forward 4 to 6 weeks and our oil is ready to go. So we'll go ahead and pull it off the shelf. And in this case, now we're using a nice jewelweed oil. This is from jewelweed that we harvested and put into the oil to extract on 8/13/2019. So this stuff is more than ready to go. Just like our tincture, after 6 weeks, we can leave it in the jar if need be. As long as the plant material is properly submerged, so it's away from the air, it'll sit just fine like this. But it's not going to get any more potent than it would at 6 weeks. So we'll get our jar out. We'll open her up. Now we got to strain it off. So for that, we're going to need a jar and our strainer. Again, we're going to use this handy guy right here with the removable screen. Go ahead and pour our oil through the screen. Just want to make sure that we remove any of the plant material. All right, we'll call that good. Now, if we're going to go all the way, again, just like our tincture, we would want to use something to squeeze this plant material to get all of that oil out of there. Any bit of oil that we could. Drip dry, and we're just going to let this guy sit over here. All right, now here is our nicely extracted jewelweed oil. Now, we could use it topically just like this, but sometimes that can get a little bit messy. And what if I needed to take it on the road? What if I was going camping or something? I'd like to make this a little bit more portable. So at this point, we could take our infused oil and make a number of products with it. With the incorporation of beeswax, we could turn this oil into a solidified product, like a salve, a lotion, or a balm. To do that, we would need, of course, the beeswax, our oil, a double boiler of some sort, and we'll talk about some of the options here in a second, and then a final container for our salve, lotion, or balm. Now, any kind of container is going to work, whatever you have available at home, but I always recommend using glass. Now, really, you just want to avoid soft plastics. The liquid that we're going to pour into here, this melted beeswax and oil, is going to be quite warm, and you do not want to pour that into a soft plastic. It's going to be quite dangerous. All right. So from this point on, everything that we're going to do is going to be pretty warm. So you want to be cautious at home to avoid any kind of injuries. Now, to make our product, again, it comes down to a ratio of wax to oil, right? Now, it's going to be the wax by weight to the oil by volume. And based on the amount of beeswax that we use, it's going to be the final solidity of our product. The more wax we use, of course, the stiffer the product's going to be. Less wax, obviously a little bit softer. So it's a matter of preference, but where we're going to start as a beginning ratio to get you going is 1.25 ounces of beeswax by weight to every 16 ounces of oil by volume. And you can move that ratio in any direction you need depending on the size of the product, the amount of oil that you're working with. So we're going to want to weigh our beeswax and measure our oil. Until we have the ratio that's going to work for what we need. Then we're going to want to use our double boiler. Now, if you have a double boiler at home, that's perfect, but we can fabricate something with what we have available to us. Here we're using a pot of water on a hot plate, and that's going to work just fine. Into that, we're going to use this container right here. This is where we're going to melt our beeswax and then blend it with our oil, right? Now, if you don't have something like this, that's fine. You can use a metal bowl over top of this boiling water. So it's important to remember, though, that this bowl is going to get hot, right? So you're going to want to use an oven mitt or some hot pads or something when you pick it up, just to make sure we can avoid any injury. So we're going to go ahead and turn this guy up nice and warm, get it going. Going to put our oil into our container. Add our beeswax that we've weighed out. Set it into the water. All right, so after a few minutes, we'll see that our beeswax has begun to melt and is blending right into our oil. So we just kind of want to stir it up every once in a while, keep it moving, kind of speeds the process up. And once our beeswax is fully immersed in the oil, completely melted, we'll turn it off the heat, remove our container. Remember, again, if you're just using a metal bowl or something, make sure you're protecting your hands from the heat. And we're going to pour our oil into a container. Right there. All right. And as this cools, the beeswax will harden back up and it'll solidify our product. Remember, the ratio of wax to oil determines how stiff the final product is going to be. So something like a salve or a lip balm or a lotion is going to require slightly different ratios of oil to wax. But start with the ratio that I gave you, see how that works for you, and you can adjust it to your preferences from there. And it's just that easy to make teas, tinctures, and salves at home. Now that we've covered the basics on how to craft the products, and we've got a little bit of time left, let's talk about some of my favorite plants to work with. Now, these herbs that we're talking about here are what I like to refer to as local allies. Allies is in, we have a synergistic relationship. We work together as a team. These herbs aren't just commodities to be bought and sold. No, they're friends. And we work together to create powerful medicine for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities. Herbs like dandelion, from the French, dente de lion, as in the tooth of the lion. Now, the entire dandelion plant's useful to us. The aerial portions, the leaves, stems, and flowers, as well as the roots, can make potent medicine. Stinging nettles, Urtica dioica. Now, you'll see stinging nettles, if you can look at it up close, the hairs on the plant, on the end of each hair is a trichome, which has formic acid and other histamine chemicals in it. That's where you get your stinging effect from. But nettles are a potent herbal medicine, great for arthritis, inflammation, and the stalk itself can actually be made into cordage to make ropes. Blackberry, now the entire genus Rubus is full of medicinal benefits. Not only is the fruit high in anisayathine and other antioxidants, but the leaves themselves can be made into a number of healing teas. Jewelweed, oh my gosh, look at this. I love jewelweed. It's an impatient, touch me not, from the dispersal mechanism of the seed, right? Now the juice, the sap inside of the stems of jewelweed is a great remedy for poison ivy. Apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? Our food is medicine as well. Red clover, I love red clover in salads. It's got a nice sweet flavor to it. I also love to use it in tea. There's a lot of studies right now for a compound that they found in red clover that they actually believe helps fight cancer. So that's an interesting development they're watching close right now. The red clover is just a delicious addition to a number of herbal remedies. Plantain, I could talk all day about plantain. Now this is the broadleaf plantain, Plantago major. There's also the narrow leaf, lanceolata, and they can be used interchangeably. Wonderfully beneficial. Now this herb is probably most well known. You could take a leaf of the plantain and chew it up, apply it right onto a bug bite, and it'll stop with the itching and the swelling and the pain. Wonderful, wonderful herb. Witch hazel, oh my gosh, Hamamelis virginiana. We actually use witch hazel quite a bit at Small House. We create a topical astringent from the bark and the leaves of the plant. I love witch hazel too because it flowers in the fall. The species that grows here where I'm at in Michigan flowers in the fall, and these beautiful, beautiful flowers. Goldenrod, love it. Now, most people want to say that goldenrod is part of their seasonal allergies that they have in the fall, but that's not even close to true. The pollen from goldenrod is far too heavy to be spread, and it's actually the ragweed that flowers and sheds pollen around the same time that causes our allergies, and a tea from goldenrod can actually help relieve these allergy symptoms. Autumn olive, now certainly an invasive plant, and we don't have time to get into that debate right now, but it is important to note that the berries of autumn olive are edible, as are the leaves. They can be used to make a delicious tea. Queen Anne's lace, wild carrot. All carrots that we've come to know and love today have all been derived from this wild plant. You can tell the roots actually still smell like carrots and can be used just like a carrot. And the flowers can be made into a delicious jelly. Elderberry, very, very popular herb. Elderberry syrup, elderberry wine. I actually use the flowers from our elderberries. We make a tincture from it, which is wonderful for boosting the immune system. It's antiviral, wonderful for cold and flu season. Chicory, which is all over the roadsides in the late summer right now. You can actually use the roots of chicory, roast them, and use it as a coffee substitute. White pine. Now, that's the state tree of here in Michigan. It's got 5 needles that come together in a cluster. That's how you identify the white pine. It's the only pinus where the cluster of needles comes in a set of 5 like that. Very high in vitamin C, and the leaves can actually be used, the needles, as a tea. We can brew a tea from them in the wintertime. Exactly what we need when we're battling cold and flu season, especially if we haven't prepared in advance and we don't have some herbs on stock. We can still get to the white pine regardless of how deep the snow may be. Mullein, or as my son calls it, the toilet paper plant, but I'm not allowed to tell that story anymore. Mullein is a wonderful herb, great for respiratory issues. It's a biennial, so the first year you'll see this rosette. The second year it'll put up its flower stalk with those beautiful yellow flowers you see on roadsides. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium. It's a styptic herb, which means it helps stop bleeding. So you can take the leaves of yarrow and you can chew them up right on the spot and apply them to a cut, and it will stop bleeding almost on contact. It's antiseptic too, so it's wonderful on cuts and abrasions like that. The wintergreen, I could go all day talking about wintergreen. One of my favorite herbs to work with. Wintergreen has a compound in the leaves known as methyl salicylate, which is similar to what they use to make aspirin. So we can use wintergreen, we can ingest it as a tea or even use it topically for pain relief. Sorrel, oxalis, nice sour treat that you can find when you're weeding your gardens. Delicious addition to salads. Strawberries, right? The leaves of strawberries can be used in a nice tea to help with menstruation issues, discomfort and cramping. Chickweed, Stellaria media. There's a beautiful early spring herb that we'll find growing in our yards, which makes a wonderful topical treatment for itches and rash and other skin conditions. Horsetail, which is high in silica, so we can use this to make medicine for our nails and as well as for our hair, a nice wash for our hair to help brittle hair and baldness. Yellow dock. Now you'll find yellow dock growing quite often in the same places that you find stinging nettles, which is wonderful because yellow dock leaf actually helps with the burn from stinging nettles. It's almost like Mother Nature has a plan the whole time. Violets. I love violets in the spring. I love to use them as tea. The flowers add a nice beautiful color to the brew. Sumac. Staghorn sumac here. The berries at the top can be used to make a delicious lemonade-like beverage. Lamb's quarters, Chenopodium alba, absolutely delicious, incredibly high in vitamins and minerals. Similar to a wild spinach is how you could consider this one, and quite prolific and quite common everywhere that we go. The wild rose. How about St. John's wort? Now, St. John's wort has a long list of uses that we don't have time to get into right in this moment, but look at this beautiful, beautiful plant. Serviceberry, Amelanchier. Now we should be using serviceberry simply as a landscaping shrub. It's just beautiful. It's native. It flowers early in the spring, and then later in the year, around June, it'll produce these delicious berries. Mustard. Now all of the brassicas that we know have all derived from a wild mustard, and the mustards that grow wild in our fields and along our roadsides is edible as well. Selfheal, Prunella vulgaris. It's a wonderful herb. As you can tell by its name, even since antiquity, it has been prescribed to heal a number of ailments. Heal all, if you will. Burdock. This is like Mother Nature's original version of Velcro, right? Blueberries. Boneset. Now, boneset's fun. Although the name would imply that it's used for healing bones, broken bones, it's actually best used as a cough suppressant medicine. It's wonderful. You can make a syrup from it to help ease a heavy cough. Now, what's interesting about these herbs, however many herbs that we just spoke of, and the multitude of benefits available to us when we get to know these plants, all those plants are within a simple bike ride from my house, within a mile of where I live. It's important as herbalists that we think local, buy local, and we be local. One of the most important things that we can do to make our little corner of the world a better place is to focus on being as local as we possibly can. Thank you so much to the Seed Savers Exchange for allowing me this opportunity to share my herbal passions with you today. I really enjoyed this time that we got to spend together. If you like this presentation, if you're interested in learning more about herbs, pre-order my new book, The Artisan Herbalist, available now at theartisanherbalist.com. Thank you so much.